Fire in the long dark. The first thing Kyle Mercer tasted was copper. The second was cold. He blinked into a world bleached white by frost and pain. Shards of the SSV Artemis lay clawed across the ice around him, a ribcage of torn alloy exhaling black smoke toward a sky full of unfamiliar constellations. Wind keened through the wreckage like a saw. System. Check, he rasped. His neural HUD guttered on. Readouts stuttered across his vision. Pilot. Multiple contusions. Likely concussion. Body temperature falling. Craft catastrophic failure. Beacon damaged. Position unknown. Outstanding, he muttered, bracing on a scorched strut and pushing upright as memory returned in broken images. The Scythian ambush. Evasive spins through flak. The die-hard dive into an uncharted atmosphere because vacuum meant certain death. Alive, for the moment. Training took over. He scoured the husk of the fighter and assembled a survival stack. Med spray, nutrient rations, a multi-tool, a thumb-sized plasma igniter, and the shattered beacon he might yet coax to life. Night slid in early, carrying a marrow-deep chill that made his teeth chatter. Shelter, heat, signal in that order. He leaned rec panels into a crude windbreak, scavenged seat foam, insulation, and a clutch of brittle local brush, then crouched over his trembling hands as the igniter stuttered. Come on. Flame licked, caught, and swelled to a small golden blaze. Warmth kissed the side of his face. He dug the beacon from his pack, pried open its spine, and began teasing at cracked solder and scorched circuits with numb, stubborn fingers. So intent was he that he missed the first omen, the way the chittering dust creatures fell abruptly silent. The second he didn't miss, a soft crunch in snow. Kyle's head snapped up. His hand drifted to the pulse sidearm at his hip. 3 figures stood just beyond the firelight. They were human in silhouette, alien in every other way. Skin with a subtle silvery sheen that drank the stars. Eyes pale as glacial ice, watching him with a hunter's stillness. The leader stepped forward, tall, lean platinum braids coiled over one shoulder. Bands of pale fabric and fitted armor left little to the imagination, somehow communicating both economy and lethality. A bow rested easy in her hand. A quiver rode the line of her back. The 2 flanking her moved as a shadowed echo, weapons poised but not yet raised. Time stretched thin. Kyle didn't stand. He didn't reach for his gun. He met the leader's gaze and tried to keep his breath even. Her lips curved, almost a smile, almost a warning. Slowly she lowered her bow. Not surrender. Appraisal. Well, Kyle said into the wind, voice steadier than he felt. Should have checked the population tab before making landfall. The huntress tipped her head, studying him. When she spoke, her voice was low and melodic, shaped by a cadence unlike any language he knew. And yet he knew the words. Firebringer. Far from your star, Kyle's mouth fell open. You speak English? We speak many tongues, she said, stepping near enough that the fire's glow skimmed her metallic skin. Yours is plain. A rustle from the right. One of her companions made a sound that might have been laughter. Against all survival sense, a spark of indignation warmed him. Lieutenant Kyle Mercer, he said, straightening despite the ache racing his ribs. United Earth Fleet, my ship was attacked. I didn't mean to trespass. She touched her chest. I am Nara, First Hunter of the Lyrian clan. A glance to the horizon where iron clouds boiled. A storm walks. Death with it. Your flame beckons both. Come with us, Firebringer, or join the Frozen. Not much of a choice, lead on, Kyle said, packing his salvage. As the 3 luminous huntresses ghosted into the night, he followed, aware that he'd likely traded one danger for another more complicated. The hearth of Lyria, they slogged through waist-high drifts, the 2 silent huntresses fanning wide while Nara set a relentless pace. How far? Kyle asked, breath pluming. Your kind tires quickly, Nara said without malice. My kind doesn't usually crash on ice planets, he muttered, and saw the corner of her mouth hitch. You have spirit. Firebringer. The long dark keeps only the spirited. They crested a ridge, and the world opened. A valley cradled a settlement unlike anything in human catalogs. Spires of bone and ice braided together, surfaces etched with carvings that caught starlight. Steam feathered up from vents, geothermal heat, he realized. Survival through science and art. The hearth of Lyria, Nara said, pride warming the words. Our refuge since the exile. Faces turned as they descended. Dozens of luminous women and a scattered handful of men. Interest, appraisal, something else. Kyle only recognized a beat late. Male visitors are rare and valued. Nara said, catching his look. Valued how? Kyle asked carefully. New blood is precious, said the flanker to Nara's right, Vela, with a soft laugh. Our peoples are compatible. Kyle nearly tripped. What? Vela speaks freely. Nara cut in, a flicker in her eyes. Possessiveness. You are under my protection by right of discovery. None will claim you without my consent. Claim me. Kyle echoed faintly, but the storm's first knives of sleet ended the conversation. Inside Nara's dwelling, heat wrapped him like a blanket. Furs layered the floor. A central fire threw dancing light across weapons and what looked like star charts scratched into bone and hide. You will stay here, Nara said simply. With you? Kyle asked before he could stop himself. She held his gaze. Is that objectionable? Just unexpected, he admitted. Your enemies are our enemies, she said, closer now, her skin radiating heat out of step with the air. The Scythians raid our ranges and murder our own. Enemy of my enemy, he said. One reason, she allowed, her eyes unsettlingly direct. There are others. A low horn rolled across the settlement. Nara turned to the doorway. The council summons rest, eat, touch nothing that hisses. Nara, Kyle said, catching her wrist. Her skin was smooth and fever-warm. Thank you for pulling me out of the cold. You brought fire to our night, Kyle Mercer, she said softly. Perhaps you will bring more than flame. Council fire cleaned and steadied. Kyle followed Nara to the round council hall. Stone seats in a ring, 7 elders above a central blaze. Conversation died as he entered. First Hunter, said the high elder, hair white as hoarfrost, face marked with intricate lines. You bring a stranger into our hearth in the long dark. Speak. A warrior of the human race, Nara said, respectful but unbowed. Shot down by Scythian raiders over our sky. He lived. He brought fire. The high elder turned those pale eyes on Kyle. Your designation? Lieutenant Kyle Mercer, United Earth Fleet. And why does Scythia hunt you here? He told them. Distress calls, raids, slavers, a losing fight, a fall. A male Lyran, the war chief Terran, stepped from the shadows to confirm. Scythian activity had spiked at the system's edge. A sharp-featured huntress leaned forward. We know little of humans. You claim virtue? Many conquerors do. Judge by acts, Kyle said evenly. If I meant harm, I wouldn't stand unarmed before your fire asking for alliance. Approval murmured through the ring. Then the same huntress cut in, eyes sliding to Nara. If he is a resource, why does the first hunter keep him to herself? Let the clans decide. By right of discovery, he is under my protection, Nara said, stepping instinctively between Kyle and the challenge. His people bond in pairs. Not clans, is that true? The elder asked. Mostly, Kyle said, carefully navigating an alien minefield. We choose partners. Then I invoke contest, the challenger snapped. Let him choose the worthiest. Silence fell like snow. The elder's gaze was a weight. Human, speak and end blood. The room dissolved. There was only Nara, fierce, incandescent, the one who'd found him in the dark. Where I'm from, Kyle said, people choose for themselves. He turned to Nara. I choose her. Gasps, a hiss of displeasure, a lifted palm for quiet. So decided, the high elder intoned. Now speak of Scythia, and of what Earth might offer Lyria. The field of fallen stars at dawn, Terran led them over a ridge to his answer. The land fell away into a crater a mile wide, littered with the bones of starships, some ancient and half-entombed, some recent enough to flash when sunlight found naked metal. Not a graveyard, Nara said, a battlefield. The Lyrans once sailed the stars, Terran said, voice low. Scythia drove us home. We learned to fight from the ground. Kyle's breath caught at a familiar emblem half buried in ice. An old crest of the United Earth Fleet. Human, he whispered, brushing frost from the mark. An Explorer-class surveyor. 80 years at least. There was one survivor, Nara said. He lived his seasons. He taught us much of your kind. They wormed through a torn breach to the ruined bridge. Against all odds, a tactical display still lived. powered by a sipping, stubborn core. Red markers pulsed at the system's edge. "This can't be current," Kyle murmured, then saw the stamp. "Yesterday." Terran nodded. "We have watched the Scythians here for generations." "That isn't a raid," Kyle said, stomach dropping. "It's an invasion." Nara's face hardened. "They come at last. And not just for you," Kyle said, tracking vectors. "This junction touches 3 trade arteries. If they stage here, they knife into human space. Then call your fleet," Nara said, "and teach us to live through the skyfire." Kyle stripped the Artemis of what power it had left, knotted Earth hardware to ancient human bones, and whispered a long-range plea into the dark. "Dauntless," answered Captain Reeves, his voice thin through static. "Reinforcements inbound. 18 hours too far. Hold." "Not soon enough," Kyle told Nara when he felt her heat at the hatch. "We'll have to make them bleed. Then we will hunt," she said simply. "With your cunning beside our spears." Bond and blade plans came fast. The Lyrans had legacy weapons entombed in sacred caves, spike beams old as the exile. Kyle taught aim points and angles, how to punish a warship's soft underbelly. He sketched traps and false signatures. He listened, too, folding in hunting tactics that turned terrain into ally. That night, beneath the frost moon's pale eye, Nara's people invoked a ritual meant to bind warriors before battle. Among humans there were other words, pairing, promise, vow, but the heart of it was the same. 2 lives braided tighter against the world. "Do you choose this, Kyle Mercer?" Nara asked in the quiet, voice a roughened whisper. "To join strength with mine." "Yes," he said, truth ringing clean in his chest. "I do." What happened after belonged to them in the fire's hush. They woke to the wrong sound, metal on metal, a barked command in a harsh, clipped tongue. Scythian scouts. A snatched elder. A retreat toward the eastern ridge. Small team. Heavily armed. Terran reported, jaw tight. "Recon and leverage," Kyle said. "We can't let them map our defenses." Fast pursuit, Nara decided. 4 only, Kyle with me. Fela and Kieran on the flanks. Snow narrowed the world to arm's length. Nara read the white like a book. Fractured crystals, wrong scents, ice crushed out of step with storm. At the shelf's edge, shadows gathered. 8 armored hulks, 3 bound figures at their center, a field array unfolding like a black flower. "They'll call home." Kyle breathed. "We move on my—" A silver arrow hissed past and buried itself in the array. Sparks blew like fireflies. Scythian weapons whined up. Kyle was already moving, breaking their perimeter from the inside. His first pulse shot hammered a chest plate and dumped a brute into the drift. Chaos tore the ring. Nara's bow sang. Fela and Kieran became whisper and knife. Kyle dragged the High Elder down and covered her with his body, as energy bolts chewed scintillant trenches through the air. They fought like they'd been doing it for years. Bonding, Kyle thought fleetingly, before a vibroblade howled at his face. The blade never landed, an arrow speared the visor. The warrior toppled, twitching. "Thanks," he panted. "I've grown fond of you living," Nara said, feral smile flashing. "Inconvenient if you died." "Let one escape," Kyle called when the rout began. "Make hostages an expensive lesson." Kieran's arrow pinned a leg. The leader limped, dragging a survivor into the storm. "Good. Let fear travel fast." The Trapdawn painted the crater in blood gold as the Lyrans took their hidden stations among the broken hulls. The ancient Earthship, revived by Kyle's jury rigging, broadcast a counterfeit heartbeat. Heat signatures, power ghosts, chatter, everything a fleet would expect from a settlement. The real hearth lay emptied of all but fighters. The kill zone was here. "They strike within the hour," Terran said, having wrung a plan from their captive. "Your fleet is still 18 hours out." "Then we hold," Kyle said. The first Scythian ships knifed through clouds soon after, heavy silhouettes gravid with malice. They painted the false target with light and flayed it to stone. The tundra boiled. Had the hearth been there, nothing would have lived. "Now they land," Nara murmured. Dropships detached, scores. "All units," Kyle said into the bone and copper comnet they'd woven together. "Wait for feet on the ground." Then cut their legs. The transports deployed, soldiers fanned across scorched earth and found nothing. Confusion rippled. That was the moment. Hidden spike beams lit. Energy lances rose from a dozen angles and carved into soft belly plates. Modified Lyran arrows, tipped with explosive salvage from fighter guts, fell like a cruel rain. Dropships hiccuped and crashed. The command vessel lurched as Kyle walked a beam into her engine cluster and held until light became ruin. She slewed sideways, vomiting sparks. Command channels surely screaming. A transport crested the ridge and dumped troops into their emplacement. The fight collapsed to teeth and breath. Nara abandoned the bow for twin knives. Kyle burned through pulse packs. Taran anchored the line with a bellow and a hammer of a fist. They moved as one organism, no gaps, no wasted motion. Bond made muscle. The sky tore again, this time with familiar silhouettes. Sleek Earth interceptors screamed across the cloud deck and pounced on the fleeing warships. "They're early," Kyle said, a laugh breaking free. "Your people hoard surprises," Nara said, driving a blade under a pauldron. Caught between Lyran ambush and Earth fury, the Scythian formation shattered. Within an hour it was done. The field of fallen stars gained new stars to fall, terms, and a future Captain Reeves of the UF. Dauntless strode down a shuttle ramp with a face like carved stone that finally cracked into something like pride as Kyle finished his report. "Remarkable work, Lieutenant," Reeves said. "Command will want a presence here. Strategic junction. Diplomatic contact protection." "The Lyrans have protected themselves for generations," Kyle said, aware of Nara standing with her hunters on the rise, silver skin catching a reluctant sun. "What we owe is respect and alliance." Reeves followed his gaze. Understanding dawned. "You care for them," he said, then amended, "for her." "Yes, sir. We'll need a liaison," Reeves said at last. "Someone who speaks both ways. Pending the Admiral's rubber stamp, which you've earned, consider yourself seconded." Later, as Lyran song tangled with Earth cheers, Kyle and Nara stood where they had first watched doom fall and bend. "Your captain says you stay," she said. "If you'll have me," he answered. "Liaison between Earth and Lyria." "A title convenient for sleeping near our fire," she said, amusement low and warm. "And for us?" "In my culture," Kyle said, taking her hands, warm as ever, steady as bedrock, "we call it a marriage when two people choose a life." "The human before you spoke of this," Nara said. "Not unlike our bonding, more permanent." "If you want it," he said, suddenly breathless in a way battle had never made him. She answered with a kiss that said yes more eloquently than any word. When they parted, the frost moon hung pale in daylight, and Earth fighters wheeled above Lyran hunters mending traps together. "You lit a fire in our long dark, Kyle Mercer," Nara said. "You found me. You found a home." Sometimes, Kyle thought, the universe's best discoveries arrive when you're only trying not to die, and sometimes the light you strike against the cold brings back more than warmth.